with the Torah's discussion about weights and measures.
You shall not keep in your pouch 2 different weights, one large and one small. You shall not keep in your house 2 different ephah measures, one large and one small. Rather, you shall have a full and honest weight and a full and honest ephah measure, in order that your days will be prolonged on the land which the Lord your God gives you. For whoever does these things, whoever perpetrates such injustice, is an abomination to the Lord your God.
All right, so here we go. The Torah is clearly against having false weights and measures. Now understand, let's keep it here. Understand the meaning of false weights and measures. So back in the day, they didn't have digital scales. What they had was those, those old school scales? Try saying that 3 times fast. Right? Old school scales, where there was a balance and 2 things. I'm sure that's the technical term for it. And you put a weight on one side and something else on the other side, and if they're balanced, then whatever's on that side weighs the same as the other side. The Torah is telling us not to have different weights and measures. No, you can have a 1 pound, a 5 pound, and a 10 pound. That's not a problem. But if you have a 1 pound weight, it needs to weigh 1 pound. What is the temptation otherwise? See, here's the temptation. Imagine you're a seller of flour. And imagine a customer walks in and says, I'd like to buy a pound of flour. So you pull out your weight that says 1 pound on it, and you put it on one side of the scale. The other side of the scale, you start measuring the flour, and you wait till it balances out. Well, if the weight that you're putting that says, on the one side of the scale that says 1 pound, is actually 15 ounces and not 16 ounces, which is a pound, it's 1 ounce less, guess what? You're charging the customer for a full pound because allegedly it's a pound. Meanwhile, you're shaving off some of the merchandise, some of the stuff that you're selling, and therefore you're making more of a profit, and that's dishonest. It's lying, it's cheating, it's stealing, it's not good, it's not kosher. The Torah says, whoever does these things, whoever perpetrates such injustice is an abomination to the Lord your God. Clearly, God does not like it. Now, immediately following this, I want you to pay attention to the bottom left corner. Look, the verses that we just read, chapter 25, verse 13 through 16, look at the next 3 verses, 17 through 19. Here we go. Dr. Maxey, please read text 1b.
You shall remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you went out of Egypt, how he happened upon you on the way and cut up all the stragglers at your rear when you were faint and weary, and he did not fear God. Therefore it will be, when the Lord your God grants you respite from all your enemies around you in the land which the Lord your God gives to you as an inheritance to possess, you shall obliterate the remembrance of Amalek from beneath the heavens. You shall not forget.
Perfect. So text 1a talks about false weights and measures, dishonesty in the realm of the weights and measures. And text 1b suddenly, which the next 3 verses suddenly switch over to a discussion about Amalek, that ancient enemy of the Jewish people that went to war with us as soon as we came out of Egypt, etc. We need to obliterate the remembrance of Amalek, all that stuff. The Torah student is going to ask the question, and it's a basic question, it's an obvious question. And the question is, what is the connection? Ma kesher. What's the connection between text 1a and text 1b? The Torah says don't have false weights and measures, and then immediately it talks about Amalek. What's the meaning? I'm glad you asked. Rashi asks this question, and Rashi explains that it holds deep significance. Beverly, if you're up to reading, please unmute and please read text number 2.
Okay. You shall remember what Amalek did to you. The juxtaposition of these passages teaches us that if you use fraudulent measures and weights, you should be worried about provocation from the enemy. As the verse states, deceitful scales are an abomination of Hashem. After which the next verse continues, when the willful wickedness comes, then comes disgrace.
Now, thank you. This is actually coming from Mishlei, from Proverbs. So it says in Proverbs, this quote at the end, deceitful scales are an abomination of God. And then it says, when willful wickedness comes, then comes disgrace, which means that when we choose to act in a way that is dishonest, that's when disgrace, that's when the enemy comes after us. And that's how Rashi explains the connection between the first 3 verses that we focused on and the very next 3 verses. The Torah warns us against not having false weights and measures. Don't do it. God doesn't like it. And then it talks about Amalek. And Rashi explains in text 2 that this means that if we do have false weights and measures, guess what's going to happen? Help me out here, folks. Unmute yourself if you can finish the sentence. If we do, God forbid, have false weights and measures, then what? What's the next step? Help me out here.
Disgrace.
What else? What's going to happen? Why does it talk about Amalek next? What's going to happen?
Be punished.
Yeah, but more specifically,
We're going to provoke them. We're going to provoke the enemy.
more specifically, no, that it's provocation from the enemy. More specifically, what this means is, according to the commentaries, and as Rashi alludes to here, that if we have false weights and measures, then Amalek comes after us. That's the meaning. So the Torah tells us don't have false weights and measures. And then it reminds us of Amalek. And what's the loaded message? It's if you do violate this, if you have false weights and measures, expect Amalek. That's the meaning. Look what Rashi says right here. If you use fraudulent weights, measures and weights, you should be worried about provocation from the enemy. In other words, what does that mean? Fancy words, provocation from the enemy. It means you're going to be attacked by the enemy. Which enemy? Amalek. Now, the question we're going to ask is the obvious question. The obvious question is, what in the world is the connection between false measures and weights, or false weights and measures, and Amalek? Why does one lead to the other? So you sold 15 ounces of flour and you charged a pound. You charged the full price for 16 ounces. So Amalek, I mean, it rises to that level that we deserve to be, God forbid, to be attacked by Amalek again. Doesn't make any sense. And why is Amalek specifically a punishment for the false weights and measures in the first place? In other words, in short, what is going on here? The Torah tells us don't have false weights and measures. Then it reminds us about Amalek. And the commentaries say the two are connected, which means if you do this, then you're going to get that. And our question now is, it's not only my question, all of the commentators ask this question. The question is, are false weights and measures so bad that they deserve to incur the punishment of Amalek or another attack of Amalek? And if it's bad, then why not incur some other punishment? Why specifically Amalek as a result of false weights and measures? Is the question clear? Yes? We established the connection, and now we're questioning the connection. All right, let's move on. The way we're going to do this is we're going to cite, I mentioned this at the top, but now hopefully it'll make more sense. I'm going to cite two classic responses, two classic explanations of the connection between the weights and measures and Amalek. And then I'm going to introduce the Rebbe's interpretation, the Hasidic interpretation. And you're going to see some classic ethical teachings and then some Hasidic teachings. And it's going to be incredible. So buckle up. The first commentary we're going to explore is... the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar is one of the most marvelous Torah commentaries. He lived in the 1500s and early 1600s. I'm going to share my screen with you once again. We're going to read it. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat that it's a very long reading. I'm actually going to read it and I'm going to throw in commentary. Okay. Here we go. Let's get the PowerPoint shared. All right, you guys can see that? It's back up? Yes? Okay, perfect. We're skipping text 3. Don't worry about it. Text 4. Okay, Kliyakar. Actually, before we get to the Kliyakar, this is a verse from Proverbs. Let's actually have somebody read this. Mike Carter, please read text number 4 if you are available.
I'm available.
Go for it.
Diverse weights and diverse measures, even both are an abomination of God.
Okay, so that's what Proverbs. That's what it says in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs, diverse weights and diverse measures, both are an abomination to God or of God. So it seems like a straightforward verse, but not so fast. If you look at the Hebrew, I encourage you to take a look at the Hebrew, if possible. The verse says even va'even, which means weight, and even is really a stone, like a stone weight. Weight and weight. Eifa ve'eifa, measure and measure. To'avat Hashem gam shnehem. Both, or even both of these are an abomination to God. And this verse in the Hebrew, in the English, they make it sound nice. Or they smooth over the problems. In the Hebrew, you notice some wrinkles, some aberrations in the text. Why does it say even va'even, eifa va'eifa, stone and stone, or weight and weight, measure and measure? Why not just say weights and measures? And then why does it say gam shenehem, even both of these are an abomination? It should say both of these are an abomination. Why even? These two questions prompt the Kliyakar, which is one of the classic biblical commentaries, to reveal a powerful idea with regards to false weights and measures. But before I do that, I want you to be the scam artist. Okay, you ready? Can you put on your fraudulent hat? Yes? Can you help me defraud people? Let's do that. We're not actually doing fraud, but let's... Oh, hey, Mike. Good to see you. So let's actually, let's put on our hat and think about how we would defraud. Imagine, so here's the deal. You are the flour seller. You're the one selling flour. And you want to be able to sell flour and defraud your customers. Yeah, let's just say. And what you want to do is you want to sell 15 ounces of flour and charge people 16 ounces of flour. So what are you going to do? Yeah, help me out here. Unmute yourself. What are you going to do? Let's go. What are you going to do?
You're going to have a stone weight that actually weighs 15 ounces and not 16 ounces.
Good, and it's going to say on it, it's going to be labeled 1 pound or 16 ounces. Perfect. But that's not going to work. I'll tell you why that's not going to work. Because pretty soon, the customers are going to take it home, and they're going to measure it, they're going to weigh it, and they're going to see on their own scales at home, it's an ounce off, and all your customers are going to come back and say, it's a fraud, they're going to take you to court, and you're going to get busted. So, you have to think even more clever, right? You have to think really like a thief, really like a con artist, right? So what are you doing? If you want to do this, but you want to get away with it, so help me out. What are you doing? Help me out. What's the plan?
Do it sometimes and not others.
Oh, good. Oh, now we're getting scammy. Perfect. I had faith in all of you. I knew we could come up with some sort of scam. This is great. This is a get-rich-quick COVID scam. I'm kidding. So here's the deal. Here's the deal, folks. Here's what you want to do. You don't want to have only the false weight, because at some point you're going to get busted. That's amateur hour. Come on. How long is that going to last for? That's not going to work. What you really want to do, if you're really going to defraud, you want to have a correct weight and a false weight. Sometimes you'll sell a pound as a pound. Sometimes, every so often, maybe once every 3 sales, you'll do the 15-ounce special. Now, you won't tell them it's the 15-ounce special, but you and I know it's the 15-ounce special, right? So that's what you're going to do. And then, when your 15-ounce customer goes home and he weighs it on his own scale and he says, oh, it's only 15 ounces. And you say, I know what you're talking about. He says, I'm taking you to court. And you go to court. and they say, you sold 15 ounces as a pound, and then you say, I did not. That never happened. He says, you did. Ask all my other customers. All my other customers. I have so many customers who bought and weighed, and they were fine. It must be that this guy has bad mazel. Maybe on the way home, an ounce of flour went poof. I don't know what happened. Maybe he lives in a high altitude and, walking up a flight of stairs, and the next thing you know, the atmospheric pressure changes the ounceage, which is not a word. Who knows? But that's your alibi. You see, your alibi, you ready for the alibi? Your alibi is a correct weight and measure. Remember I asked you a question, why does the verse say even, va'even, ephah, ve'ephah? Why does it say stone, ephah, and ephah? The Kli Yakar says, I'm giving you the Kli Yakar outside and then we're going to do it inside. The Kli Yakar says, you know why? Because the true con artist, the true fraud, is going to actually have even, va'even, 2 different stones. One real and one fake. And one ephah and another ephah. One that's legit and one that's not legit. Too legit to quit. One that's not legit. That's what you're going to have. And that's why the pasuk said, the verse says, To'avat Hashem gam shnehem. God dislikes both of them. Even the one, not only the one that's incorrect, even the one, help me finish the sentence, even the one that is
correct.
Why does God hate that one also?
But you're using it for bad.
That's right. The only reason why you have it is for your alibi to get off scot-free from your crime. Are you with me on this? Talk about just a mind-blowing explanation. Kli Yakar, baby. This is it. Let's do it inside. Okay, I hope everyone got it. Let's read it inside. I'm going to read it. It's very long. Okay, here we go. We have a lot of long readings tonight, by the way. Okay. Oh, it's small also. One section at a time. The explanation of the matter lies in the words of King Solomon, diverse weights and diverse measures, even both are an abomination of God. So he asks, if they are both false, why does it need to state that they both are an abomination? Why would anyone make a distinction between them? And what does even both mean? Right? So what does the verse mean? And he explains. Rather, the verse must be speaking of someone holding on to one false weight and another true weight. So what does he do? He goes and weighs for some people using his smaller deficient weight, and for some people he uses the larger regular weight. Thus, if people go to the courthouse accusing him of underweighting, which may be a word or maybe not, he can claim to the court, but I've sold to so many people. Ask them whether their goods were weighed correctly, and they will attest that nothing was missing. Since these other people refute the accusation of underweighting, the judge will naturally respond to the plaintiffs that the goods became small in your possession. For if not, what distinguishes you from the other people? And why is it that other customers are not missing anything? Then, when the court sends for his weight, he will send the proper one, right? If they look in his house for the weight, they'll find the kosher weight. So again, the Kli Yakar says, the real scam artist, the real fraud, is going to have 2 weights. One that's accurate and one that's inaccurate. And the reason for this is that he's going to sometimes use the real one, sometimes use the fake one. So that if he gets busted with the fake one, he'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. Here's the real one. And ask all these customers. Oh, it must have been your problem. And he'll gaslight the customers that he defrauded, saying, you made it up, or you're wrong, or you did something wrong, or you dropped it, whatever it is. But he'll basically use that as his defense. Let's continue. So it emerges, says the Kli Yakar, that if not for the proper weight, he would not be able to sell to anyone with the smaller one. He wouldn't be able to get away with it. This is why he maintains the proper one to present falsehood as truth. This is why even the proper weight is an abomination. And therefore it says, doing all these things is an abomination to God. This is back to our verse in Deuteronomy. Right? That's why our verse, the verse that we started the class with, that's why it says doing all of these things, all, not only the fraud, but also the legit sales, all of them is an abomination to God, referring to weighing with the proper weight as well. Because every time you do it correctly, it's part of the lie. It's part of the alibi. It's part of getting away with theft. Since he only weighs with it in order to fool the world. It was of this that Solomon said in Proverbs, both are an abomination, to include the proper weight as well. Let's continue. This explains Oh, hold on. 1 second. So now we have an understanding. I'm going to go all the way back. Take a look at our original text. Take a look at our original text from Deuteronomy, from this week's Torah portion of Tetzei. Oh man, what a missed opportunity in the translation. Look at the last paragraph. Before the last paragraph. Look what it says. Look what it says from the beginning. You shall not keep in your pouch 2 different weights, one large and one small. You see, you think typically that what's the problem? The small weight. No. The problem is both. You see what the Kli Yakar says? You with me? You and I would think normally that don't keep 2 different weights, one large and one kosher, one unkosher. So what's the problem? The unkosher one. No, the problem is also the kosher one, because that's how you get away with it. Same thing with the ephah. Look at the last paragraph here. For whoever does these things is an abomination. But if you look at the Hebrew, it's ki to'avat Hashem elokecha kol osei eleh. All of these things, both weights, are an abomination. Anyway, that's, again, according to the Kli Yakar, that's the meaning of it. Now, we asked the question before, based on the Torah's juxtaposition between the weights and measures and the Surah of Amalek, reminding us of Surah of Amalek, that if you do this, then that's going to be the punishment, that will be the consequence. Amalek is going to attack. Well, what's the connection? Why Amalek? What does it have to do with Amalek? Why are they... So now take a look at the end of the Kli Yakar's explanation. I'm going to continue reading. Look where my mouse is hovering. Right here. This explains the juxtaposition of these laws to the commandment to remember what Amalek did to you. For at first glance, it is difficult to understand what an enemy attack has to do with weights. Did Amalek come and attack the Israelites because they were using false weights? It should be a question mark there. What's the connection? So, because you're going to use false weights, that's why they're going to attack, or that's why they did attack? What's going on here? So take a look what he says. Rather, that larger proper weights are referred to as deceitful scales when one uses them in order to deceive, as explained above. So that's a given, that even the larger weights are deceitful. And therefore he says, one who uses them to weigh, even correctly, conceals his wickedness from the public eye and pretends that the heavenly eye cannot see. That is the key idea. What is going on here? The person, the thief, the ganef, has a proper weight. Why? To fool people. And you know what that means? That means that he is not concerned about God. Because the only intention is, how can I get away with it? How can I have an alibi? If I get accused in court of theft or of underselling, then how do I get out of it with an alibi by saying, no, look at all these other customers and look at the weight that I have in my hand or my shop? All of the schemes are in order to fool people. What about God? Doesn't think about God. Doesn't God know? Of course God knows. It's not thinking, only thinking about how to fool people. But not caring, not concerned about the fact that God knows and the fact that a person is being dishonest. Therefore, the Kli Yakar says, what happens is, here we go. Look at the last line here. This is the way of the Holy One, blessed be He. He tells these cheaters, you have stolen and cheated in secret. The Holy One, blessed be He, will send your enemy to take all that you have in the open. And that's the final point of the Kli Yakar. That when a person steals, when a person takes advantage of someone else in a secretive way, then what happens is their comeuppance is that their stuff is taken in a public setting. Their stuff is taken in a brazen fashion. And this is what the Kli Yakar is saying. The Kli Yakar says this is what the Torah is saying. When a society becomes a fraudulent society, when a society is obsessed with everyone taking advantage of the other, and everyone trying to game the system to do so in a very sneaky way, so that people won't know but they can get away with it. When that becomes the way of life, then what God sends is Amalek to take, if one takes someone else's stuff, then their own stuff is taken away, and not secret anymore, but taken away in a brazen fashion. And that's what Amalek is. Amalek is the enemy that attacks and takes, and that is Mida keneged mida, that is the appropriate response and the consequence for taking something from someone else in a deceitful, in a way that's trying to be hidden. Does the Kli Yakar's interpretation, is it understood? Does it make sense? Yes? Any questions on the Kli Yakar? This is the first of 3 explanations. Questions on the Kli Yakar, please, if you have a clarification or a question or a comment, now's your time.
I have one.
Go ahead, sir.
Was it said about Amalek that he knew that God existed, but he thought it just didn't matter? Was that his attitude?
Yeah, Amalek doesn't care. Amalek is brazen about it, and that's the exact opposite and the counter for the person that says, let me do something in a tricky fashion. Amalek comes, strolls in with rock music, and like the lights are dimmed, and Amalek's like, let's rock. Right? That's how Amalek comes in. Amalek comes in like a gangster. Right? So when we come in, like, I got different weights, I got one that's kosher, one that's not kosher, etc., etc. So the consequence of that is that it's done not b'seiser, not b'seiter, not hiddenly, but it's taken away begalui, in an open, in a brazen fashion, which is exactly Amalek. Amalek knows. Amalek doesn't care. Amalek is not. Amalek doesn't need a false way to measure. Amalek is going at gunpoint, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? Yes? So this is someone who says, look, I don't have the guts. I don't have the guts to go ahead and straight up steal from someone else. So I'm going to sell them 15 ounces instead of 16 ounces so I can make myself feel okay, like it's only 1 ounce. Who's going to know? And I sometimes sell kosher, the exact amount. This person is running through hoops to justify their own behavior. And so the Torah says, essentially, and the consequence of that is, it's done. It's going to be done. It's going to be taken in a brazen way. No more hiding. You're hiding. Done. In general, this is a theme that we have in Jewish scripture and in literature. It says when somebody desecrates God's name in secret, then their punishment is meted out in public. God says, I don't like secrets. That's the bottom line. God does not like secrets. So you do something in secret, God says, I'm blowing it open. So I think David asked the question in the chat, that doesn't make sense. This whole thing doesn't make sense, because if Amalek attacks, then it's going after the entire nation, not only the people that are selling 15 ounces and charging 16 ounces. So how's that fair? It's a great question. So I don't know if it means a full-scale Amalek attack or it means an individual basis. In other words, when we have the juxtaposition, the smichut between the story, the law of the weights and the story of Amalek, does it really mean that the entire that Amalek's going to attack all the Jewish people? Maybe. And maybe it means when society is so corrupt that it's gone to that point, then we have a full-scale attack. But in general, on a smaller scale, it means that on some level, there's going to be a consequence, and the consequence is not going to be a hidden consequence. It's going to be an open consequence. I don't think we believe that, look, we don't understand God's ways, and when we see injustice, we ask the question, why are innocents suffering? So I don't know that we'll have an answer to that question. But I don't think the Kli Yakar is suggesting that due to the indiscretions of a few, therefore the entire Amalek is going to attack the entire people and take everyone's stuff begolui, in a revealed way. I think it's more specifically midah keneged midah for that individual, for those individuals. How would it play out exactly? I don't know. It's hard to chart, but it's more of a concept, right? The concept is that this person is trying to steal and do so to get away with it, and the point is, no more secrets. No more secrets. So this is all the Kli Yakar. That's all explanation number 1. I want to explore the Netziv, Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, another great scholar. He lived in 1800s, 1700s. Let me check his bio here. Hold on. The Netziv lived 1800s. Great scholar, and wrote a commentary on Torah, which we're going to explore in a moment. Okay, here's what it comes to. Again, it's a long reading. It's actually not that long, but it's complicated. No, it is long. It's in a few different sections. It's very long, actually. Okay, let me give it to you outside, and then we're going to do it inside. The Netziv points out that in Judaism, there are 3 cardinal sins. Above all other sins, there's 3 big sins. And you may know them to be the following 3. Idolatry, adultery, and murder. Those are the 3 big no-nos. So when it comes to all other mitzvot, we say that if a person is threatened by pain of death to violate a mitzvah, you violate the mitzvah and save her life. Except for these 3. These are the 3 that we say, Yaharog V'al Yavor. Let yourself be killed, but do not transgress these 3. So if somebody says, to somebody, I'll kill you unless you serve idols, don't serve idols. I'll kill you unless you violate the laws of adultery. No, you can't do it. I'll kill you unless you kill someone else. You can't do it. These are the big 3. Somebody says, God forbid, to somebody, I'll kill you unless you eat non-kosher. Go for it. Eat the non-kosher. But don't kill, don't commit adultery, and don't worship an idol. Those are the big 3. Avodichat damim. That's it. Those are the big 3. The Netziv says, why these 3? What's the meaning behind these 3 specifically? I mean, they sound important and weighty, but what does it mean? And he explains that in general, life is divided in 3 dimensions. There is, and I'm going to use hand motions. You ready? I'm going to use hand motions to kind of chart the 3 dimensions. Dimension number 1 is our relationship with God. Dimension number 2 is our relationship with ourselves. And dimension number 3 is our relationship with others, with our fellow human being. I'm going to say that one more time. Us and God, us and self, us and the other. Make sense? 3 dimensions. Done. Serving idols is a violation of which dimension? Us and God. Adultery, this is the tricky one. Adultery is a violation of us and ourselves. Good. Ourselves. Why? Because it's not holding back our own passions. Good. And what about murder? It's a violation of us and the other. 3 dimensions, 3 cardinal sins. We'll do it one more time. I want to make sure it's cemented because we're building on this foundation, folks. We got to let it dry. So let's make sure it's cemented and solid. Life exists in 3 dimensions, 3 relationships. Us and above, us and self, and us and lateral. Us and God, us and self, us and the other. The cardinal violation of us and God is idolatry. The cardinal violation of us and our own passions is not being able to control ourselves when we see, is us not being able to control ourselves and violating adultery. And us and the other, what's that? That's the cardinal. What's the cardinal violation of that? It's taking someone else's life. Yeah? With me so far? Okay. The Netziv says, when it comes to almost every mitzvah or every prohibition or every sin, let's talk about every sin, the sin can be motivated oftentimes by any and all of these 3 dimensions. So he gives the example of violating Shabbat. So we're going to read this inside, but I'm going to use his example because it's a good example. He says, a person violates Shabbat. Why? Why? It could be either because I got to work, I got to make money. But what about God provides? Who trusts God anyway? I got to work. I got to make the money. God, let God write me a check. I got to make the money. Which is indicating of a little bit of a lack of faith in God. Because if we really believed in God, we would say, you know what? Lazam gain. I'm not going to work. So it's a violation of which one? Which dimension? Us and God. Or it could be, I'm violating Shabbat because I want to enjoy something. Shabbat says no, but I want to. It's not about God, it's about me. That would be the second dimension. You with me on that? Okay, yes? Hold on. I don't want to assume that you got that. Yes? Does that make sense? So
Yes.
it could be one sin, but it could be motivated either because of a breach in our relationship with God or a breach in our own kind of holding our own passions in. He doesn't talk about how it would be also between us and the other. I don't know if Shabbat would fit into that, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? So the point is that any one sin might be motivated by one or another type of motivation. Make sense? All right, we have enough information to jump into the Nitziv. Okay, again, let me share this. I'm going to read it. I know I'm doing a lot of talking, but I hope this makes sense. Here we go. Nope. Yes. No. Oh, this is the Kliaker still. I'm sorry. We're past that. That's so 10 minutes ago. Here we go. The Nitziv. Our sages have taught that the most severe sins are those of licentiousness. That's adultery. Idolatry and murder. The severity of these three, however, is not connected to their punishment. After all, the punishment for desecrating the Shabbat is more severe than the punishment for sexual crimes. Rather, they are considered cardinal sins, these three, because one who sins will sin in one of 3 basic ways. Out of lack of faith in God and His Torah, out of inordinate desire or anger, or another character trait relevant to social interaction, right? Either above, self, or across. The archetype of lack of faith is idolatry. The archetype of illicit desire is licentiousness. If I'm not pronouncing,
Licentiousness.
Licentiousness. Even better. Sounds even worse. I mean, it sounds even better. And the archetype of negative character traits is murder. So there are basically three dimensions of sin, and these are the archetypes of all 3. Let's continue. Every sin comes in one of these 3 forms. Desecration of the Shabbat for the sake of one's livelihood is a matter of faith, and thus a shade of idolatry. If one does so for pure benefit, then it is an offshoot of licentiousness. At least I'm a good student. Now, the worst of these sins is idolatry. Right, of all 3, either abrogating our bond with God or self or with the other, he says, the worst is between us and God. Since it concerns faith and the possibility for repentance is remote, as all those who go do not return. In other words, once that faith, once that higher connection is severed or is compromised, it's hard to come back. That's his take on it. Now, let's continue. Remember, he then continues to quote the verse that we read before. Remember that which Amalek did to you. By placing this next to the previous subject of the weights and measures, it is apparent that Amalek comes on account of the sins of the weights. This is mystifying. Since in the desert there was little opportunity for merchandise for which they would need measurements or weights. What were they doing in the desert already? What were they weighing? The manna. However, this matter can be understood by contemplating why our sages have so deplored the sin of the weights to the extent that they have said that the sin of the weights is greater than that of licentiousness. Why should it be more severe than any other kind of thievery? Listen to his question. He says that the sin of false weights and measures is worse than straight up theft. Worse than straight up theft. Why? Here's what he says. When one steals some precious object from another, it might be a result of his desire for that object, in which case it falls in the category of licentiousness. In other words, let's say he wanted it, the other person had it, so he stole it. That's not about God. That's not even about the other. Yes, he took it from the other, but it's not about the other. It's about his own passion. He couldn't hold himself back from taking it. However, one who makes false weights does not generally do so out of desire, but out of a lack of faith in God, who through divine providence nourishes and sustains every creature in accordance with its deeds. Therefore, the sin is in the category of idolatry, he says. He says the theft of false weights and measures is not typical theft, it's idolatry. Therefore, they have said that the sin of the scales, although it is only an offshoot of idolatry and yet is yet far from the chief sin of apostasy, nevertheless is more severe than licentiousness, the chief sin of immodest desire, because a lack of faith is hard to repent from, and it impinges on the honor of God's name. Understand, before we get to the next paragraph, understand what he's saying. What he's saying is, if a person just straight up steals, then their own passion, their own greed, their own desire got the better of them. That's akin to the second dimension sin, like adultery, which is just, too excited to hold back. So whether it's this form or that form or theft, it's all that's come from the same place. But a person who's not so filled with desire that he's stealing something, but he's like, making calculations. How can I get an extra ounce? I need the extra cash. I want to make a bigger profit. I want to up my profit margin. You see what's happening here? Not like he sees something and gets carried away and in a crime of passion steals it. No. This is way more calculated. This is way more, as we say in Yiddish, it's way more worked out, and it's thought through. And it's like, well, if I charge 16 ounces and only give 15 ounces, if I scale that out, it's going to... This is somebody who's making money but wants to make more because he doesn't trust in God, that God's going to provide. And thus, the false weights and measures is not a crime of passion. It's a crime of lack of faith in God. It's a crime of idolatry. Does that make sense? That's what the Netziv says. With this, we can return to the Torah portion of Amalek, which is introduced by the words, is God in our midst or not? And then an Amalek came. Okay, what he's saying here is, in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses reminds the people of, remember when Amalek attacked? And he reminds them right after telling them about no false weights and measures. That's how we started this class. Moses tells them no false weights and measures, and then he says, don't forget Amalek. But when Amalek did attack, after the Exodus, in the book of Exodus, how was that story introduced? Right before the actual attack of Amalek, the Jewish people complained. They kvetched and they said, is God in our midst or not? And right after that verse it says, and Amalek came. This itself is curious, he continues to say. After witnessing so many miracles, how did the Jewish people ever doubt this in their hearts? However, as we have explained previously, they doubted whether God would remain in their midst after the passing of Moses within the natural order, and once there were no more miracles. It was account of this deficient faith that Amalek came, that is because of the sin of the scales. Basically, they said, yeah, God in general, whatever, but we need to make a plan. Is God really here, or do I need to step up to the plate? Is God really going to take care of my parnas and my livelihood, or do I need to shave off an ounce on my scale, on my weights, to make a little bit more profit, to make sure that that I'll be okay financially? Do I need to cut a few corners, a few ethical, moral corners, to make a few extra bucks, so that I can survive? Or do I have faith in God? When the Jewish people originally, back after the Exodus, in the book of Exodus, when the Jewish people said, Hayesh Hashem b'krabenu im ayin, was God with us or not? They knew God was generally around, but they wondered, would God help us? Pay the bills each month. That lack of faith brought Amalek. That lack of faith brought Amalek's attack. And so Moses reminds them, don't make the same mistake with the weights and measures. It's the same mistake. Is God with me or not? Or maybe I need to make a plan to get a few extra shekels in my account this month. Don't make that plan. Rely on God. Otherwise, that's when Amalek comes. So Amalek, according to the Netziv, Amalek comes when we have a lack of faith in God. And the sin of the scales, of false weights and measures, is a lack of faith in God. Okay, let me stop sharing. What is going on here with my screen? Why can't I do anything? I have this weird, creepy mask here. Okay, let me stop sharing. Yes, let me check in with you. Make sense? Second answer makes sense? Yes, sort of?
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes.
He says a lack of faith in God is a lack of faith is hard to repent from. Well, people have lack of faith and then they come back. People have lack of faith and I
Yeah.
don't think it's awfully harsh to think lose faith, that's a one-way street.
I agree with you, actually. I don't fully myself. This angle doesn't. I understand it. Does it fully resonate with me the way I also have questions on it. I think it's important, though, to have a broad spectrum of Torah ideas, but I don't have a good answer for your question. I had the same question. His perspective is, and it's his perspective is, that lack of faith is the worst. I mean, look, you could argue that lack of compassion to another human being is worse. That lack of self-control is worse. That's what he says. And therefore he says that straight up theft, which is lack of self-control, is here, but false weights and measures, which is trying to get one up over God or not believing in God, that's even worse. And that's where Amalek comes from. Okay, that's what he says. So we have two answers now. The Kli Yakar explains the connection between scales and Amalek. You try to defraud in secret, you're going to get blown up in public. Right? That's Kli Yakar. And the Netziv says, when you doubt God, or when you don't believe in God, when you challenge God, that's when Amalek comes. And that's what the scales were, challenging God or not believing in God. And now that we have these two explanations, studied and done, let's get to the Hasidic interpretation. Let's get to the Chabad flavor. You ready for this? I think you're going to like it. Here's what Chabad Hasidic philosophy says. What is at the core of false weights and measures? What does that mean spiritually? What does that mean for us inside? Here's what it means, very simply. What it means is having a false sense of what is weighty and what is not weighty. Having a false sense of what is important and what's not important. I wrote in the email that I sent to some of you before the class, today we live in a time during the pandemic that part of the question that everyone's wondering is, what's essential and what's not essential? Which businesses are essential? Which workers are essential? And so here's what I want to say to you tonight. In our own lives, which actions are essential? In our own lives, what is truly essential? Right? Is that extra vacation essential? Is whatever, all of the other stuff, is that essential? Or is taking care of our neshama essential? Are the soul pursuits essential? Are the body pursuits essential? Or are the soul pursuits essential? I think you probably know where I lie on this matter. I think you probably can guess where I'm headed with this. Oftentimes, we invest our energy in things, and the vast majority of our effort in things that are ultimately non-essential. And why do I say they're non-essential? Because they don't last. They're temporal. You can't take it with you. And what does it mean anyway? Right? Even while it's around, what does it mean? So oftentimes we invest in things that are like quicksand, disappearing acts. As opposed to, and at the cost of, investing in things that are really essential, that are eternal, good things, mitzvah things, Torah things. And what the Torah is reminding us is to not have a false sense of weight and measure. Don't have a false sense of what's weighty and what's not weighty. Let me share my screen with you, and I'm going to read some text from the Rebbe's teachings, from the Rebbe's Farbrengens, and we're going to go through it. So buckle up, it's going to be a lot of fun. First I have to figure out why the screens are not advancing. Okay, here we go. I'm going to skip this. Here we go. Text 10. The Jewish people, after all, are the children of the Lord your God, and God's people are a part of him. How then? Is it possible for the evil inclination to convince a Jew to commit a sin? This is referring to any sin. The answer to this is the sin of the scales. The evil inclination does not initially approach a Jew with the intention of having him rebel against the Holy One, blessed be he. Rather, he starts by telling him one thing today and then telling him another thing the next day. He tries to depreciate his weight. What that means is the way the Yetzer Hara works, the evil inclination is, it says, doesn't tell a person first thing is, go ahead and sin. No, that's way too bold. First says, look at all these other things that are really important. Look at all these other things that are really valuable. And starts diminishing the value of things that are really essential and promoting the value of things that are not at all essential. That is the tactic of the Yetzer Hara. The point is this, the Rebbe says. The evil, this was 1962. The Rebbe said this at a Fabrengen. The evil inclination is able to impact the Jew when he has one weight and another weight. One ephah measure and another measure. One large and one small. Like we said before, based on the Kliyaka, two weights, one big and one small. That is when he maintains two different kinds of yardsticks and measures, one for measuring material needs, big weights, and the other for spiritual needs, small weights. Were this Jew able to effect the change within so that he does not have two different measures and weights, his service of God would not be weakened, leaving the evil inclination without any chance of influencing him to indulge in unimportant luxuries, even if they are technically permitted and certainly not in any prohibited activity. Here we go. The godly soul comes along and tells the Jew, listen, you ought to know, always remember, never forget that you are a child of the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. It is something you were given, for which you never had to work. You inherited it as a son of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or a daughter of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. By that reason alone, wherever you find yourself and whatever you may be doing, you must conduct yourself as befits a child of the King. This knowledge will not let him do anything unworthy of the King, and certainly not from using the abilities that the King gave him to do something that is against his will. Common sense alone demands this, without any need for hours of profound reflection to arrive at the decision to behave this way. On the other hand, when it comes to the material interests of the animal soul, everyone recognizes, even those who value physical matters, that the body is only valuable insofar as it is a living body, and that the body is alive not by its own power. It is only because it has something that sustains it that it can move about, that it has intelligence, that it can think about what he ought to do and what he ought not to do. In other words, the body itself has no life. The body itself is dead. It's only the life of the soul. So, inasmuch as this is so, thinking about the body, taking it into account, and responding to its demands, must only be to the extent that it benefits that which sustains the body. Once a person is accounted for their bodily needs by eating, drinking, and sleeping at the appropriate times, there is no longer any need to think about the body, since it is nothing more than a tool. Rather, he needs to think about the thing that sustains the body, and that is the soul. Take a look at this. When it comes, this is the Rebbe lamenting the state of affairs. And again, I just want to be very, very clear. The Rebbe explains that the two sets of measures, the large measure and the small measure, so often in our experience are used in the incorrect way. We use the big measure, what's weighty, material things, and what's not so weighty, spiritual things, and it shouldn't be that way. So here's the Rebbe explaining the problem. When it comes to physical matters, the attitude is that whatever it isn't enough. Even when he knows that people with lesser means than him are perfectly happy, he has every justification why he needs more. The main one being, I want it. So regardless of whether or not it makes any sense, he wants 200. And if he has 200, he wants 400. And nothing will deter him from doing whatever he can to get more. The same is true even with regard to superficial matters. For example, the children's education facility. When it comes to secular studies, and by the way, if you don't think this is true, just walk through the campus of Emory. Just walk through any university, any higher education facility. When it comes to secular studies, you can find a person donating $250,000, another $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. Even if they've managed to allow a little religious studies, since secular studies are the main thing, you can find a big donor. And this time at Jewish donors. However, when it comes to the school building needed to learn religious studies in a pure holy environment, even an $18 chai donation is considered a respectable sum. And how much more so, twice chai. Anything more than that, it's outlandish. The Rebbe is speaking sarcastically here. He recalls how his grandfather told him about the cheder he used to learn in, and that the teacher's pay was so many kopecks a month, and the schoolhouse itself was only so many inches tall, and so there's no need for any large buildings, beautiful halls, and certainly there's no need for anything they weren't interested in 3 generations ago. This then is the difference between one weight and another weight. It's when there is one weight attitude for material needs, that whatever there is isn't enough, and that nothing is too difficult to get more of. However, for spiritual needs, for matters of pure holiness, there is a different measure, double standard approach. It's possible to make do with whatever your grandfather, great-grandfather had so many generations ago. I hope you understand the passion with which the Rebbe said this. how you have Jews who will go ahead and say, we need to support these wonderful causes, all wonderful causes in the world. And what about spiritual causes? What about Jewish causes? Crickets. Nothing. Chai, $18. The big money is going to, another wing in another private university.
Aquarium.
The aquarium. No. I don't want to get, I don't want to in any way get personal on any level. But the point is, it's going to stuff. Why? Because the shul. What does the shul need already? Yeah. What does the base medrash need already? What does the house of study need already? Nothing. Modest, right? Modest. That's the perspective. That's two measures. That's a double standard. That's the Rebbe's explanation of the double standard that we live with. When it comes to the needs of the soul, the Rebbe says, let's personalize this message. It's not about money. Let's talk about avoda, the amount of effort we put in on a daily basis in various areas. So a person might think to himself that after he prays in the morning, after he studies some Torah, he can forget about the soul, forget about prayer and study, and concern himself only with the body and its needs. Thus he develops a perverse one weight and another weight, in that he is immersed in bodily matters for the entire day. With regard to the soul's needs, even for those few hours that he dedicates to the affairs of the soul, he's distracted by all the things that he needs to do for his body. This is the kind of double measure that the Torah forbids. The body is constant, while the soul is only for special occasions, during prayer, and even then with distracted thoughts, Torah study, and mitzvah observance. The notion of double measure can exist in holy form. After all, one second. So the Rebbe presents the problem. The problem is the perverse double measure, where material things get all of our attention and focus and resources, and the real, eternal, essential things get barely an afterthought. If I have extra time. That's not right. That's a large measure and a small measure, and it's distorted. What the Rebbe says is we should actually have a big measure and a small measure, but the other way around. The notion of double measure can't exist in a holy form. After all, in truth, one should relate differently toward the soul's needs than toward the body's needs. It is the double measure that the Torah permits. A person ought to show preference and preeminence to the needs of the soul over the body's needs, so that the way one approaches spiritual or physical needs is with a holy kind of double measure, double standard. With regard to the soul, since it is eternal, then its affairs must receive continuous attention without interruption. However, with regard to the body, since it's not eternal and it exists only on account of the soul that animates it anyway, then for all that he concerns himself with the body is connected. To it and works to benefit it, he does so with interruptions. After eating and drinking and after sleeping, he turns his attention away from it and occupies himself only with those things that give the body life, the affairs of the soul. All right, I think that was it for the text. So I want to summarize and then close out tonight's class. We had a question about the sin of the scales. What's the deal? Why Amalek? What's going on? We had 3 answers. Kliaker said the problem is trying to scam secretly, so God blows it up publicly. The Netziv says the problem is lack of faith in God, and that's when Amalek comes. And the Rebbe says, you know what Amalek is? I skipped the text actually. The Rebbe says, you know what Amalek is? Amalek is the part of you that's cynical. Not you, the part of a person that's cynical, that says, take it easy. Don't get so excited about the Jewish stuff. Don't get so excited about the soul stuff. Come on, let's go eat. Let's have a steak. Let's go buy some sushi. Let's get excited about the body stuff. That's what Amalek is. Amalek is the cold water poured on your passion, on your spiritual passion. When you're excited about Yiddishkeit, you're excited about God, you're excited about Torah, you're excited about a mitzvah, Amalek's like, nah, come, let's go shopping. That's Amalek. And where does that come from? How does Amalek come? Remember in the order of the Torah, the verses. When do you get Amalek? When you have false weights and measures. When our attitude is materialism is important, spirituality will find some time for that also. When that's the attitude, that leads straight to Amalek. Rather, the attitude needs to be the other way around. The attitude ought to be that what's really important is the soul, what's eternal, what's meaningful, what's valuable, God, Torah, mitzvot, Yiddishkeit, that's what's important. And the food, the eating, sleeping, drinking, we'll have time for that also. We'll figure that out. We'll squeeze that in between all of the good stuff that we're doing. That's the final message and takeaway that I'd like to. That's the final message that I'd like to leave you with, and I hope the takeaway that you will emerge from this class with, and that is that in our lives we should, especially at this time, we should ask ourselves the question: what in my life is essential? Right? What are the essential activities? We're all thinking about essential stuff. What's essential for me? Is it all the politics I kach in? You know what kach means? Kach means I get heated up about. Is it the materialism? Is it the next purchase? Is it the next... What am I excited about? It's only a question that you and I can answer for ourselves. And then ask the question, what should I be excited about that I could increase a little bit more excitement? How can I get a little bit more excited about a mitzvah, a little bit more excited about Torah, a little bit more excited about supporting a Jewish cause, a Torah cause? How can I get a little bit more excited about that which is truly eternal and valuable? So in the final analysis, having false weights and measures is the easiest path toward the cynicism and the coldness of Amalek. But having the correct weights and measures, being able to evaluate what is truly a priority. As Kavi said, the main thing is to keep the main thing, or to make the main thing the main thing. If we really know our priorities, then we're going to be able to fend off Amalek and the cynicism, because we will be living a life of passion and a life of impassioned priorities. May all of our measuring systems, internal scales, do a good job of evaluating what's really important in life and what's icing on the cake. And may we allocate our time and efforts and resources accordingly. Ray, I know you have a question. Let me formally close out to let those that need to go. And then I'm happy to stay on for the next 5 minutes to answer questions. Thank you for joining me tonight for Torah studies. Let's make this introspection, and let's live an essential, meaningful, rich, valuable spiritual life. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for Torah studies. We'll see you soon. All right. I'm staying on, and I have a few announcements, but Ray, go ahead.
I'm talking about Amalek. I know that we were told to destroy Amalek, and we didn't destroy Amalek totally.
Correct.
Is this the Amalek? Is this the descendant that wasn't destroyed?
No, this is the inner Amalek. Everyone has an inner Amalek. In fact, gematria, numerology, the gematria of Amalek is the same as Safek. The word Amalek is the same numerical value as the word Safek, which means doubt. So a doubt that a person has, and when I say doubt, it's not like I don't know what to do, not that kind of doubt, but the cynical doubt, like, is it really that important that I do this mitzvah or I don't do this mitzvah? Is anyone, does God really care? Those questions, that's the inner Amalek. That's the Amalek that messes with us. That's the Amalek, forget the external Amalek. We don't know who that is anyway, as you pointed out. It's the internal Amalek that we're trying to battle with. It's the internal Amalek that we need to contend with on a daily basis. It's the voice that says, when we're excited, take it easy. Take it easy. Don't be so excited. There's something more exciting out there. Let's go watch some TV. That's more exciting. That's what it is. Instead of studying some Torah, let's watch TV. Instead of doing a mitzvah, helping someone else out, helping a neighbor out, let's go to a restaurant. Instead of supporting a meaningful cause, let's, do something else. That's Amalek. Or sorry, that's the skewed scales that basically feed Amalek and that cynicism. And that's not a good place to be in. To be cynical is not a Jewish ideal. It's not a Jewish thing. Forget ideal. It's not a Jewish value. Sorry, forget ideals and values. It's not kosher. It's not kosher. But we're all susceptible to it, and we all have moments of it. And no one's perfect. So it's not a judgment, but we have to be on guard. We have to make sure to do everything that we can to push that away with both hands.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions, comments? Go, Richard.
I'm confused about what the Rebbe said. I'm not clear on it. Is he saying it's legitimate to have a separate, heavier weight, a smaller weight? Is he validating two different kinds of weight?
Yes.
So is that a contradiction to the Torah in terms of the same weights? I'm unclear about that.
Nope. The Rebbe is interpreting this mitzvah in a non-literal fashion, right? The literal fashion is when you're selling flour, sell a pound for a pound. Do not mess around. The Rebbe does not change that. The Rebbe does not comment on the literal law regarding false weights and measures. The Rebbe is saying that spiritually, psychologically, right, for us internally, there's also a concept of a big weight and a small weight. What do we value in life? And so often, all too often, human beings end up valuing the physical stuff more than the spiritual stuff. And the Rebbe says that shouldn't be like that. What should be is, on the contrary, we should value the eternal stuff over the temporal stuff. That's all the Rebbe is saying. Does that mean that you're allowed to have false weights and measures in business? Of course not. Not talking about that. But again, in a spiritual context, the meaning of one weight here, one weight there is not kosher when it's one way, but when it's the other way internally, it actually is the ideal. Again, it's when you're learning a mitzvah kind of on a higher level, it doesn't always work down to the legal maneuverings. It's not exactly going to be on a legalistic level. It's more of a teaching now. It's more of a moral teaching. Any other question? But good question. Questions or comments? Question, comments, clarifications. Did anybody receive a package from me today? Okay, good. Okay, one more announcement. So okay, I have so many announcements. One more announcement though. IJA dinner. We have a very special program. It's coming up in a few weeks, September 10th. We have a catered dinner. See, we even feed the body, not only the soul. Feed the body too, because you gotta keep, we gotta keep all the weights and measures happy. So we're gonna feed the body, catered dinner, top of the line catered dinner, EB Catering Co. Delivered to your house on the day of. You're wondering how's that gonna happen? We're gonna make it happen, folks. We're that good. We're gonna make it happen. Kosher dinner delivered to your home, gourmet dinner, multiple course dinner delivered to your home. With an all-star program, we have a chazan and opera singer from South Africa. We have an author and scholar from London, England. We have swag will be delivered to your home. We have IJA branded swag, surprise swag, that will be delivered to your home, and you enjoy the program. So and it helps support. It helps support the good work that Intown Jewish Academy does. So please join us and help support us and be part of the celebration of Jewish life and learning, Thursday, September 10th. More details on our website, intownjewishacademy.org. I'm excited and I can't wait to celebrate together. So join and spread the word. You do not want to miss this. This is the hybrid event of the year. Kind of an in-person, but also virtual. Can I get real food? It's not virtual food, by the way. I'm not emailing you like a picture. This is real legit food. Oh, and the chef is going to be on. The chef is going to be on talking about and you're going to finish off the food. I mean, not, well, in both senses of the word. You'll finish it off and then finish it off. I don't want to reveal too much. It's going to be an incredible concept, an incredible event. So join us. And thank you for your support. Consider helping sponsor the event as well. There are different levels. And again, it all goes to a good cause for adult Jewish learning and a Jewish education, spreading Torah in Atlanta and beyond. I should mention, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Last month we had, I think, 16,000 people listen to classes on our podcast. This month we're on trajectory for close to 20,000. And it's incredible. I got a Facebook message from somebody in Toronto saying, how do I get the handouts? I'm listening to the podcast and, where do I get the materials? And I'm like, I'm not actually sure if I can share papers on podcasts. It's kind of like virtual dinners. But if there's a way, we'll figure it out. But either way, just know that that what we study has far-reaching impact as well, literally around the world. We have countries that would blow you away to know, like United Arab Emirates. Is that a country? Did I make that up? That is a country. We have people that are listening from the UAE. Go figure. All right, that's it. Great, and Iran and other countries, and I hope that everyone's happy with what I say, and we want to stay friendly with everybody. So that's it for tonight, and thank you for joining. It's great to see you. Have a meaningful night, and always keep your weights and measures honest and skewed in the right way. See y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.